fact, in the absence of dietary carbohydrate, the brain runs so efficiently off of ketone bodies that you can drastically deplete glucose levels of people in deep ketosis, and it won't affect them. A 1972 paper describes an ethically questionable study where overweight patients fasted for 2 months, putting them in deep ketosis, meaning they were producing a very large amount of ketone bodies. Insulin was then infused into these patients until their blood glucose went as low as 9 milligrams per deciliter, a level that should cause coma or death. However, the patients didn't really react to this. There was no particular change in cognition, nor did their body react to the drastic drop in blood sugar.
The only people in the room who had palpitations and sweating and anxiety were the physicians. The people who had the blood sugar levels that should be associated with coma or death were completely unfazed, had completely normal mentation. It is clear that the human brain is perfectly happy with beta-hydroxybutyrate as not just its majority fuel, but essentially its sole fuel.
Actually, anyone watching this video would have, at least one point in their lives, been in a similar situation, where blood glucose is very low and ketone utilization is very high in their bodies. It's estimated that a newborn's brain consumes on average between 60 and 71% of its body's energy budget. Compare that to the lowly 25% of the body's energy budget an adult brain uses. Despite this massive need for energy, a newborn's blood glucose level is incredibly low, at around 35 milligrams per deciliter. This is half of the lower end of a normal adult's blood glucose level. This means that the newborn's brain would have to be deriving more than half of its energy from ketone bodies. In his book on the health potential of ketones, Dr. Muneta Tetsuo, director of the Muneta Maternity Clinic in Japan, explains that pregnant women, whether they are restricting carbohydrate or not, are producing higher than normal levels of ketones. By comparing the mother's blood with the newborn's umbilical cord blood, he found that out of 416 cases, 70% of the babies were born with even higher levels of ketones than that of the mother. By analyzing the villi that provide contact with the mother's blood to the fetal membrane, Muneta deduced that the fetus must be living in an environment of elevated ketones from the start of pregnancy. And, even a month after birth, babies on average had a blood ketone level 5 times higher than that of a normal person. As Muneta wrote in his book, newborns are living off of ketones. Not only is ketosis helpful for supplying the energy needs of a newborn baby, it may also be an important factor in the development of the brain. It's been understood that exercise is beneficial for the brain because it increases the level of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, which is a protein that promotes the growth of new brain cells. Because of this, Dr. John Rady of Harvard Medical School has given BDNF the nickname of Miracle Grow for the brain. However, the mechanism for how exercise triggers BDNF was not clear for some time, until a paper came out last year that was headed by Assistant Professor of Biochemistry Dr. Sama Slaman. I think the title is quite straightforward. Exercise promotes the expression of brain-derived neurotrophic factor through the action of the ketone body, beta-hydroxybutyrate. Growth of the brain is very important in a more broad sense as well. Growing a big brain is of course what allowed us to become human. And when it comes to human evolution, efficiency is the name of the game. That is, our bodies had to develop methods for more efficient extraction and utilization of energy, mainly to support our big energy-hungry brain. One trade-off for a bigger brain was a smaller gut. Less energy spent on the gut meant more for the brain. As is stated in a public Library of Science article titled Man the Fat Hunter, to adjust for the high metabolic cost of a large brain, shrinkage in gut size was a necessary accompaniment. A shorter human gut had evolved to be more dependent on nutrient and energy-dense foods than other primates. A smaller gut is less efficient at extracting sufficient energy and nutrition from fibrous foods, and considerably more dependent on higher density, higher bioavailable foods that require less energy for their digestion per unit of energy/nutrition released. This implicates fat as an important food source because it is obviously very energy dense, providing 9 calories per gram. But the efficiency of using fat for fuel is deeper than just calories. Also, our brain's power and capacity for intellect comes not just from the increase in size, but also from the enhanced blood flow and efficient use of oxygen. Roger Seymour of the University of Adelaide and his team found that blood flow to the brain increased at an unexpectedly rapid pace over a period of 3 million years. Seymour says, while the brain was increasing 3.5 times, blood flow rate surprisingly increased 600%, from about 1.2 milliliters per second to 7 milliliters per second. This indicates that our brains are 6 times as hungry for oxygen as those of our ancestors, presumably because our cognitive ability is greater and therefore more energy intensive. This would suggest that the most important fuel for the brain is going to be one that uses oxygen more efficiently. And this is exactly what ketones do. Dr. Richard L. Veach found in 1994 that administering ketone bodies to a rat heart led to a 25% increase in hydraulic work, but a decrease in oxygen consumption. Theodore Van Italia explained this phenomenon in a 2003 article by saying that the ketone body beta-hydroxybutyrate increases the efficiency of energy production in the cell's mitochondria. If you were schooled in the States and attended even a day of biology class, you would know that mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cell. But is this improvement in efficiency happening in the powerhouses of the brain cells? Well, Van Italia says that studies of blood flow and oxygen consumption in the brains of food-deprived obese human subjects revealed values that were well below the normal levels for adult human brains. They suggest an increase in the metabolic efficiency in human brains using keto acids as their principal energy source in place of glucose. People who have done extended fasts will sometimes report a euphoric or drastically enhanced state of mental clarity around day 6 or 7. This is when ketone bodies have reached a particularly high concentration, somewhere over 5 millimolars per liter, depending on the person. In essence, ketone bodies may be a preferred fuel source for the brain, as they provide more cellular energy per unit of oxygen compared to glucose. Getting more bang for your oxygen through ketosis would be incredibly significant for the development and maintenance of big brains. Some of Dr. Dominic D'Agostino's work revolves around taking advantage of ketosis's efficient usage of oxygen in the cells. His research touches on ketosis's potential for treating a variety of illnesses including epilepsy, ALS, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and even some cancers. His initial research, funded by the Office of Navy Research, was aimed at improving Navy SEALs divers' diving capabilities. The most straightforward display of ketones' efficient use of oxygen is that simply by being in the state of ketosis, Dr. D'Agostino was able to double his breath hold time from 2 minutes to 4 minutes without any prior training. To sum all this up, when fasting long enough or when protein and carbohydrate intake are restricted enough, our bodies switch over to breaking down fat and making ketones, potentially the most efficient fuel that can be used by humans. The brain is a massive blood flow, oxygen, and energy hog that needs to be constantly fueled. Anything that could enhance energy efficiency would be very important for the survival of big-brained humans. Despite the evidence that our bodies and brains may actually prefer to run on ketones, ketosis is still frequently misunderstood as a potentially dangerous state. Going back to the thymus story, surely children's thymuses wouldn't have been irradiated if the anatomical data of healthy children had been available at the time. And maybe with ketones, the perception of them would be totally different if the first pieces of data didn't come from a diabetic, but say a healthy pregnant mother or a healthy newborn.